Hi, everyone, and a happy new year to you all. 2023. Well, I hope I can give just a few pointers, a few perspectives that might be of some help to us through this year. Let me first of all just reflect back on 2022 with a few reflections and thoughts. At the end of the year, I noticed on a particular site of a scandal in across the EU, particularly into the Parliament, and how obviously that would affect 27 European nations. I then reflected back on 2023 and I said there'd be a major scandal that would affect numerous nations. I think there's a lot more to come out of this one yet. But when I reheard what I had said and I read the article, I didn't leave it with a sense of wow, but a real sense of so what. And I think one of the great challenges with anything that we might say, hey, consider this, this is prophetic, is the so what question. You know, I spoke last year about food shortages, culling of animals, harvests that would be blighted, protest movements at the end of the year. And, you know, at one level I can tick boxes and say yes, 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 and yes. But I also have to ask the question, so what? Because there's too much sometimes that's spoken that is, this is what will happen. But we're left with, okay, in the light of that, so what? We're not looking for change's sake. We're looking for change for the sake of transformation, for something to replace what was there before. So, here, before I go into 2023, a so what reflection. I think what anyone sees for the coming year, the coming month, the coming whatever, is to help us be prepared and to help us where we feel led to pray. It's not there for information. Here it is, here's a piece of information, you know something somebody else doesn't know. It's never for that. The scripture says, when you see these signs, look elsewhere, look beyond the sign, look to what it's pointing to. And signs are really, really important. So I do think as well that when a sign takes place, it's like a leverage point. It's like it does accelerate what it's pointing to. That's one of the great powerful natures of signs. One, it helps us see, so we must look beyond the sign, but also it causes a bit of a leverage point. So it does have a power in itself whenever we get revelation. But I think what I want to steer away from myself is the, we had this revelation tick box, wasn't that very clever? No, we've got to see transformation. And so often we're very quick to connect dots. This is what I saw, this is what's happened, therefore A equals B, and off we go. I remember last year talking with someone on Zoom, and it was at the time of the election post Boris Johnson, and they said it'll be a woman. The person running third in the election is going to receive it, and it will be something of a revival of what Margaret Thatcher carried. Now, I didn't disagree with that because that was very similar to where I was already running. But I think our interpretation is quite different because we are biased politically. When that candidate did get the election, I said on another Zoom, I think a real sign that something is shifting more rapidly in the UK than we think is if she doesn't last very long. And I think it's 45 days later, she was out. Because we have to empty out the past. And I think as believers, we are continuing to look for something from the past too often in order to feel a place of security. We are called to go ahead, to understand that the past is not here to be repeated, it's to be learned from, to be advanced from, and something has to come into its place to replace it. And that's where I think all of us have a political bias, a personal bias, emotional bias, and we have to be very careful about just connecting dots and wait for the fuller picture to come out. So I think in everything that is said, that we listen to, we need to be very careful on that. I heard someone recently say they saw the spectrum, church in the middle. One side was one economic system, the other side another. And that God was saying we had to obliterate one and put our weight down on one end of it. I think that was a little bit of a biased interpretation. Surely the interpretation that a 5-year-old would come up with is two economic systems opposing each other. The church cannot buy into either, but has to pioneer a new way. And I've said that for a long time. The mark of the beast is about buying and selling, but the work of the kingdom is about giving and receiving, which will involve buying and selling for sure, but giving and receiving is the primary motif. And so we shouldn't be too afraid of the mark of the beast that has been here since time immemorial and will remain. But surely the church is to pioneer something very, very different. As we come into 2023, let me start by saying my conviction, shared by others, not saying shared by all, but shared by others, is that we're somewhere in a 20-year cycle running from 2020, which I would say that the COVID crisis marked a major before and after. That's why we must never be looking for, let's get back to normal. Normal is over, and we need to even be careful about talking about new normal. We're still on a journey till we see something established, and I think that will take us right through to the year 2040, thereabouts. Last year, I spoke about we are going to hit, and I would say this is continuing, we're going to hit not one crisis that is like mega. There will be mega crises, but they like get stacked up, and even smaller ones get stacked up. So the effect is very, very significant. At the end of this year, obviously we're looking at China yet again. What is going to take place there? They've relaxed their restrictions. Is just yet another sign of levels of crisis that we're going to have to navigate through. Crisis, as many people have said before me, also is opportunity. And I think that is the adventure that we are on. And the adventure not just believers are on, but the world is on. We see a new heaven and a new earth was John's final vision. And he said in that new heaven, new earth, symbolized by the New Jerusalem, which was the size of the then known world, the shape of the Holy of Holies, so highly significant. When he said he saw it, he said, but I saw no temple in it. And that has to be our driving vision. The church, vital. Call it the temple, should we wish. The place of God's intense indwelling. But what John saw was a new heaven and a new earth. The whole of creation renewed. And that is surely what we're here and what we're pushing for. And I'm going to get now to 2023, so let me give you this backdrop. I am no expert on currencies and economics, for sure, and have been challenged by many people in terms of my naivety on such things. When cryptocurrency came to my attention, having not even a clue what it was about, I said, because I've been carried for a long time, that there's a new currency, a new economic system coming to birth. Cryptocurrency was not it, but a sign that it was on its way. And that's where I want to come in 2023. The biggest thing I see for this year is the initiation of some new currencies, of shifts in other currencies, of major currency wars taking place this year. Of a shift, particularly again away from the dollar to other currencies. But I see certain nations initiating, probably as prototypes, even new currencies, new ways of handling their economics. I see during the year that there's going to be, from certain central banks, some unprecedented actions where they have never done this before, and they're doing this and not just repeating an old pattern. So I'm expecting new currencies to come on the market this year and for major shifts because of that. Now, it can cause us, how do we navigate this question? But it also causes me to rise up a little bit in faith, because I would say wherever economics are touched, that is the major sign in Scripture of a shift in spiritual powers and systems. It is absolutely vital that we do not quickly resort with a fear and what is going on now, what bad things are going to occupy this space, to actually how can we engage, whoever the we is, and the we is many times way beyond the likes of me. So I want to encourage those of you who are involved in the financial world. There's something very specific for you this year that is about change. It's about risk-taking, not risk as in I'm going to put my bets on this, but risk in the sense of this is what I believe God is speaking to me and making a response in the light of it. So I believe, for me, probably the biggest sign this year is going to be currency shifts. Also, just as I was waking one morning, and I always consider the going to sleep time, the waking time can be very, very fruitful. It's where I term waking visions take place. And as I woke, I saw an outline of the map, and all of a sudden, Africa and then Latin America, South America moved eastward. Africa positioned itself underneath Asia. South America positioned itself underneath Europe. So the map looked very different. It was preceded by like a rift, like a real, almost like a zip being undone in Europe, like a rift, like a cutting apart. And I think Europe is going to find itself hugely divided is probably too strong, but polarized this year, going in two different directions. Part of it is going to want to stand with the United States. Part of it is wanting to pull away from that. It's a real sign of the Western powers, as have been, being destabilized. And I think we're going to see that this year. The relocating of Africa, I think there's a freedom for Africa that is coming from Europe. Europe colonized Africa. And obviously the conference at the end of the 20th century, get my dates right, the end of the 1900s, let me go there first. I'm losing it a little there. The end of the 1800s, the 19th century, the conference in Berlin that carved up Africa for Europe's benefit. There's a freedom coming to Africa this year, but in a time of freedom from Europe, but in a time of freedom, we have to be very careful that we don't just relocate to a new form of bondage. And I saw Africa lining up under Asia. So there's going to be fresh alignments there that would be very noteworthy. And some real losses, wonderful losses for the European context. But there's also a danger for Africa. Latin America saw coming under Europe. That bondage, if I call it that, is not going to disappear. And in some ways is going to be an area of tension throughout this coming year. I do believe that both Africa and Latin America are vital for the future economic structures. Obviously Brazil and South Africa being part of what's termed the BRICS nations, I think is very, very important with Russia, China. Now, India subcontinent, I didn't see shift at all. There's going to be a measure of independence there and asserting its own new strength that is going to find economically in this coming year. Now, let me go back one step to 2022. The things I spoke about last year, I said will last through, I'll be very markedly present until the spring of this year. Likewise, I see what is beginning in 2023 is the beginnings of something. It's not everything going to be fulfilled, but the signs that these things are on its way will be very, very strong. A couple of personal aspects, as opposed to the big picture. I'll come back to the map, the globe that I saw moving in a moment. I think that in the early part of the year, I think where we will see God at work in us is where there is wrong independence. We're going to learn how to be dependent more on others in the community, in the context of community, and to hear the voices of others. Last year, Gail really helped me understand that truth does not reside in us, but it resides between us. And God is going to work on that area of independence. I think the latter part of the year will almost be the opposite, where there is inordinate dependence. God is going to remove that from us. In other words, it's a year of right alignment for us as individuals. Alignment so we're not independent, and alignment so that we are not inordinately dependent. We stand in our own position in relationship and alignment with those that God's putting around us. So the first part of the year is going to be challenging, particularly for the likes of me and others who can wave the flag of independence too strongly. The latter part of the year will be more challenging for those who find their security in a dependence and over-dependence in others. So it's going to be a little bit of a halfway measure throughout the year. Got to go back to that map that moved, the globe. As it moved throughout all the shifts and the seams and the divisions and the kind of the fresh alignments trying to be pushed, what I saw spill out of it all over were gold coins. I think again it indicates there's something spilling out of these new alignments with regard to new currencies. We are fast pushing toward where an old way of economics, and this again I think goes back to this person's vision, the church in the middle between two economics. We have to find a new way of economics, of organizing ourselves that touches in on money but goes beyond that. Hence gold coins that of course exist but are not really part of our currency, I think just spilled out. And again, I want to encourage people, there is new investments for this year, and I speak as one with no knowledge, new investments this year that probably are somehow tied to old investments, old ancient pathways spilling out of the ground, not in terms of exploiting, but in terms of understanding that we're here to steward. So this year, 2023, I see the currency, the economics as the big major sign. Inevitably, political shifts. Inevitably, people who were here at the beginning of the year will not be here at the end of the year sitting in the seat of power. They're going to be uprooted, quite a number of them. But the real bottom line issue, I believe, is God is pushing a fresh economics. So my encouragement to the likes of you and I, probably we need to discover, like the widow did, what's the two coins? Where do we put them? Because the two coins in Scripture released an incredible level of the prophetic, released something for a 40-year unlocking right through to the climactic eras leading up to AD 70. So here we are in a 20-year unfolding. Maybe even if we just find one coin and we know where we're going to invest it, where we're going to put it in. As a phrase that we've used, let's invest, let's sow where we want the world to go. And if we can do that in this year, whether it be a leverage year on economics, perhaps we can see more released than we perhaps are currently expecting. So those are some of my perspectives for this coming year. Please weigh, please let it sit with you, add to it, modify it, nuance it, etc., etc.